There he is, Joe Schad, ready to go after last night's depressing event with the Miami Dolphins on Thursday night. How are you doing, Joe?
Good morning, Big O. Doing okay. Hopefully, Tua Tagovailoa is okay as well. Obviously, the early indications seem to be, better than worse. So that's good. According to Tua's trainer, no internal bleeding, negative X-rays, waiting on an MRI, and good spirits. So certainly, the news could have been worse. Coming out of last night, the fact that Tua traveled home with his teammates is good.
Where are you with the whole doctor stuff? Because I have a problem, with all this that people are challenging Cincinnati's trauma center and then the independent doctor from Sunday. And, Joe, I've been covering sports a long time, my brother. And one of the things I've learned is we're all different and we all respond differently. And Tua might be a guy, well, actually, Tua is a guy that recovers quickly because you saw it with his hip where he freaked us out, just like Willis McGahee bends his knee backwards in a bowl game, and less than 2 months later, he's making a walk from that curtain at the back end of the convention center all the way up to the podium, and about 150 of us are walking with him, marveled at that. And Cethan Carter is out, has been out for 3 weeks. That doesn't mean that happens to everybody. You might get concussed, and you might be fine in 3 days or a week. The neurologists have the information. I have a hard time questioning these people because it's their livelihoods on the line. It's their licenses on the line. They're not some fan or anything going, oh no, how many fingers? Oh, two? Yeah, you're fine. Go ahead, get out there and go do it. This isn't, 50 years ago or anything. These people, their licenses are on the line. Their reputations are on the line. They're not there to cheer on the Dolphins or the Bengals or any team out there. I don't know if you feel the same way, but I kind of find it disrespectful because none of us are doctors. We don't have the information. And at least for me, I do know this. I've learned everybody's different. Injuries, maybe one guy comes back from a knee injury in 6 months, another guy comes back in 18 months. You just never know with injuries, and head injuries are exactly the same way. Eric Lindros, every time he had a concussion, it was a longer and longer amount of time that he was out because he had lingering effects unlike other people. And Cethan Carter may get lingering effects that Tua doesn't. So where do you stand on all this open criticism? Hell, I had a doctor. Listen to this, Joe. I had a doctor come on the chat and say, "Oh, Tua had a seizure last night. That's why his fingers were like that." And I told him, "You're full of shit, doc, because I had a second-degree concussion. And guess what? My fingers curled up and I couldn't control my fingers. And I'm looking at my fingers move the way they were moving, and I could not move them. I could not control it. And it took me like a minute to finally shake it off. And apparently, whatever when my head slammed against the concrete, it gave me a second-degree concussion." So everybody wants to be a doctor. How do you feel about the open criticism of the medical people in charge?
Well, there's a lot to digest here, and obviously, you put a lot out there over the course of the last few minutes while you were talking. There's so many different perspectives and angles. Obviously, the first thing is there's nothing more important than Tua Tagovailoa's health. So anybody who questions whether or not Tua should have been playing in yesterday's game after visibly stumbling in a game just 4 days earlier is expressing that concern only out of respect for Tua Tagovailoa's health and for the health and well-being of all NFL players. So there's not any sort of, ill will here. It's people looking out for the player because as indicated just a few minutes ago, for many years there wasn't enough looking out for the player, especially when it relates to the head injury. We may never know whether or not Tua Tagovailoa did in fact sustain a concussion or any type of head injury or head trauma in the previous game. Obviously, at least one independent medical examiner determined that he had not, because if he had, then you would not have been allowed to return to the game. There are some things for the NFL and NFLPA to dig into. Gross motor skills is one of the things that's a disqualifier. Now, I know that the Dolphins stated that it was the back injury that had him stumble in the previous game. But the NFLPA has a list of questions that they would like answered. And that's why I think it's important that the questions do be asked and that the questions do be answered. All the questions that the NFLPA has, the specific questions. Was his back examined? What exactly were the steps that were taken to evaluate a possible head injury before he was allowed to return in the previous game? Was he examined multiple times or at all in the 4 days between the last game and this game? And the one thing we have to keep in mind is that you can't trust the player to know or to tell you. It's two things, right? Not only just to be honest with you, but sometimes they don't know. Those who have been concussed are certainly not the best people to let you know if they're good to go back in. So, certainly a scary situation. I hope that yesterday's injury was in no way related to the previous game. We may never actually know that. It's hard to imagine that any independent medical official would clear Tua and say that he's fine to return to a game if there was any indication that he may have in fact suffered a head injury. So there's a lot there to digest. You started off by asking about the Twitter doctors, and it is true that there are a lot of people whose opinions should not be weighed or considered too much.
How do you tell the
Well, but hold on.
Trump?
Let me finish my thought.
Go
Wait,
ahead.
you talked for a long time. Let me get to talk for a long time. So the thing is, there is a neurologist out of Boynton Beach, and I'm sure you've heard about this, read about this, maybe even talked about it on your show, a neurologist, an expert in brain injuries, who said before the game that in his opinion, Tua should not be playing. His opinion carries more weight because that is an area of expertise for him. Now you go ahead.
No, I'm just saying he doesn't.
Yeah.
He doesn't have the exam of Tua, the neurological exam of Tua on Sunday. And if the neurological exam of Tua on Sunday says there's no brain trauma, then what the hell are they supposed to do? You know what I mean?
Right.
So the neurologist saying that he shouldn't be on the field, he still doesn't know himself because he doesn't have the diagnosis. And that's my problem with all of this. We're not there inside that examination room. We don't know exactly what went on. And if it is some kind of a back nerve, then it wasn't head trauma. You know what I mean? And there's a lot of nerves in your back that are connecting to your head, your legs, your back, all kinds. It's all intertwined, dude. You know what I mean? You get nerves, there's nerves in your back that will numb your legs out. Okay? We all have it. It happens to us. Yeah, that sciatic nerve and all that kind of stuff. Things happen in your body that it could mess up other things. That's why I'm saying, and I get what the neurologist is saying, but he still doesn't have the true diagnosis. He doesn't know exactly
you're right. You're right. No, you're right.
And that's where Joe, I can't imagine that these doctors are going to lie, cover it up, or put Tua at risk out there and put their entire livelihoods at risk also. That just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, no, that would be malpractice.
Yes.
But just to play devil's advocate, it's certainly possible, and it has certainly happened over the course of time, that doctors, including, for example, the guy who, what did he try to do?
Which one?
Tyrod Taylor's ribs, and he punctured his lung with a needle, right? So mistakes are made.
Right, but that's
medical. Now, I'm not saying that a mistake was made, but I'm saying that it is possible that a mistake was made because in the medical profession, just like any other profession, guys who build houses, guys who whatever you can think of, mistakes.
You're talking more a misdiagnosis than a malicious cover up or whatever is what you're saying.
Right.
You're like with me. You're with me on. There's no cover up here. There's no. If anything, there could have been a human error, is what you're saying.
Now there are people out there who think that the visual evidence of Tua stumbling
Right.
and the fact that he did hit his head on the play
Yes, he did.
should lead one to make the conclusion that he should have been, in an abundance of caution, held out. So that's an argument that some are making.
Yeah, and that's a legitimate argument, and I
Right.
get it. But unless we have whatever diagnosis was on Sunday, and they told us it was this, it's all we can go by at this
Now
point.
we want Tua to be healthy. Okay, he's playing well. He has the confidence of his coach. He's a leader on the team, and all that matters is that Tua gets healthy and that he does not have a long-term effect from this particular injury.
Right.
But at some point, we are going to get to the discussion about durability. He had a back injury and an ankle injury coming into this game, and
Mhm.
so it is fair. It is fair to hope that Tua does not have durability issues throughout his career. Correct? It is
Yes.
fair. Okay,
Yes, but
I hope so.
yesterday had 0 to do with durability, and it had to do, I hate to
Yeah.
say it, with intelligence. Everything with intelligence. And
Are you talking about he should have gotten rid of the ball?
Yes, Nick
Yeah, of
Saban
course he should have gotten rid of the ball.
Nick Saban told us this a few years back,
Right.
and he was right, and he's been right from the get-go, whether you dislike Saban or whatever. I've had my own run-ins with Saban. The man was 1,000% right, and he's explained it's not so much that he's injury prone, it's that he puts himself in positions to get injured because he doesn't have the body, just like Drew Brees and just like Joe Montana and just like those kind of guys. But those guys were smart. They got rid of the football. And it's
Right.
funny because the next time he's on a podium, I will be there. I promise you, I will be there. And I'm going to ask him this question. You like to quote Dan Marino, pick a guy and let it fly. But Dan Marino was the best that when the play was going to die, he let it fly. And he needs to learn to do that.
You're
Saban,
right. You're
Saban
right. You're
explained
right.
that
But
the hip injury came from the hero play.
yeah,
One
no,
of
you're
his ankle
right.
injuries came from a hero play.
Yeah, I
Last
know.
night was a
Well,
hero play.
there's two concerns. All right,
Get
he
rid of it.
has been injured a lot.
Right.
All right, so let's hope that he's not injured a lot through his entire NFL career. Let's hope. Okay. But
Well,
also,
but
but
Joe,
no,
the
hold
way
on,
it's
hold on,
gonna
hold on, hold on,
happen.
hold on. I
But
want to make a
listen,
second.
but listen, the way it's gonna happen is he has to be responsible. He has to get rid of the goddamn ball. That's how
Yeah,
he's going to eliminate injuries.
but here's the thing. Okay. Yes, there are times where Tua needs to get rid of the ball. But we also celebrate him for being more effective at going through his progressions. Oh, look how Tua now goes from receiver 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. Oh, well, guess what? That takes time. We have Ryan Fitzpatrick saying, the one thing Tua is probably never going to be able to do is extend the play and drive the ball down the field, a la Patrick Mahomes. Well, okay. Tua is trying to show he can do that, right?
Yeah. And Patrick Mahomes is still catching up to Joe Montana, who could never also do that. I don't want to hear about what he can't do. That's not going to stop him from being a great quarterback. He can be a great quarterback dude. He was slicing the Bengals like he was OJ going through Brentwood last night.
He was
Okay.
okay. Tua was okay before he got hurt. I mean, the statistics aren't good. And he had one pick that shouldn't have been thrown and then another near pick. Not a
Uh,
great game for Tua before the injury.
that drive, he was slicing them apart, bro. He threw some nice passes in there. He was doing Miami wins that game easily going away if he stays in that game. Cincinnati wasn't shit last night.
Well, the defense was the problem. The
They were
defense was going to
nothing.
be tired. The
They were
Dolphins
nothing.
defense was going to be tired. And then you had the Xavier Howard injury. The Dolphins it's hard to imagine a scenario through which they win that game, including if Tua stays in.
Oh, God, you couldn't be more full of shit. Seriously. They were about to take the lead with Tua. What are you talking about, dude? Didn't they take the lead with Teddy for a minute?
Uh,
Yeah.
take the
Yeah.
lead.
Didn't they take the lead with a field goal with Teddy? What are you talking about, Joe? That guy would have sliced and diced the Bengals apart. Yeah, he got cocky because he was throwing all over the place and he threw one that he shouldn't deep. And that was a terrible decision on his part, which every quarterback makes. When you get a little cocky, you make some mistakes. You make it sound like he makes mistakes that no other quarterback makes.
Big
It's
O. Listen, Big O. Big O.
fantastic how you
Big
phrase
O.
his games.
We celebrated Tua Tagovailoa's recent performances. You can't overlook the fact that last night he was 8 for 14 for 110 with a 52.7 passer rating. How do you just dismiss that?
Those aren't bad stats. You're just
Those
throwing
aren't
in the
bad
one
stats.
intercept. You're just throwing in the one interception. But outside that, if you watch the game, he was well on his way to having one monster game, dude. They could not really stop him. He was moving the ball at will. I'm not sure what you were watching, but I saw a guy that he was playing better than Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow wasn't playing that well. Joe Burrow did not have a good game last night.
I'm confused. The guy was 8 for 14 for 110, no touchdowns, one interception, another near pick. Things were not going great. Teddy Bridgewater threw the best pass of the game, the 64-yarder. I think that listen.
So
I
wait a
hope
minute.
Tua.
Wait a minute. That bobble air pass that he threw, you thought was more impressive than the one Tua threw in between five guys? Seriously.
21 yards. Unfortunately, 2 plays later, he threw an ill-advised interception.
Yeah, but you
listen,
thought that
listen.
would pass
I'm not
better
trying
than
to
the five guys? Oh man, God,
He
Joe.
completed a 64-yard bomb. I don't. I think your perception is jaded.
Yeah, no, I know. Mine was so jaded that it was well on his way to looking to a franchise quarterback. Meanwhile, last year you had him like he didn't belong as a franchise quarterback, and he was already on his way to being a franchise quarterback. And I think you also questioned, could he run a high-powered offense? Well, guess what? He was running the most high-powered offense in the NFL up until last night. Come on, Joe. I think you're
Dolphins
jaded
did hold a
because you
15-14.
didn't believe in the kid the last couple of years in your writing and your assessment on our show the last year, and so you're still trying to justify your stance on that. So
What are you
then
talking about? I'm telling you my opinion of how he played in 2 quarters yesterday. That's it.
he was playing fine in two
Okay.
quarters. He was you lean too much on the stats and you're actually not looking at the game itself. He was more than handling himself in that game. If he stays in that game, if he learns to get rid of the damn ball, he would have sliced those people apart. That second half, I don't know if you've noticed, but that team gets better as the second half goes on. That's kind of the way it's been, offense and defense. So they would have made their adjustments and they would have gotten better. Like I said, they even took a lead with Teddy. Imagine what they can do with Tua. You could tell the difference of you couldn't tell the difference between Tua and Teddy in the offense.
Tua Tagovailoa obviously has a higher upside than Teddy Bridgewater. I think the Dolphins are assuming Tua misses a few games here. I think the Dolphins will be fine. I think the Dolphins should still beat the Jets and should still beat the Vikings. And if for some reason Teddy has to play against Pittsburgh, they should still beat Pittsburgh. So I think Teddy is one of the best backup quarterbacks in the NFL. It's a good thing the Dolphins have him.
I think it'll be a mission to beat anybody with Teddy Bridgewater. Unfortunately, that's what I'm terrified of. I just don't think you're going to end up getting the kind of impact that you'd like from that position. Overall, what do you think? How do you think they handle all of this? Because while I can defend the doctors and say those professionals got to know what they're doing, the optics aren't good. That nobody can defend. So what kind of road do the Dolphins take here? An aggressive or a precautionary approach?
Well, I mean, I think clearly the Dolphins are going to take a precautionary approach with Tua Tagovailoa, and they would say that they would anyway with a diagnosed head injury. A guy leaves the field on a stretcher and goes to a local hospital. You know, you I think they're going to be cautious. I think they would have been cautious, but now they're going to be extremely cautious with the ongoing NFLPA investigation into whether or not the proper protocols were followed in clearing Tua to return to the previous game. So, listen, like you mentioned earlier, Ethan Carter, 3 weeks. No one's talking about Ethan Carter because he's, a special teams guy and they're, fourth tight end or whatever. But yeah, he's missed 3 weeks. So everybody recovers different. And I know that Tua is going to be seen by multiple specialists to make sure that the multiple specialists are on the same page before he returns.
Yeah, the amazing part, he flew back right away. That to
That's a good
me,
sign. Yeah, that's a good
that's
sign.
a great sign. But again, the optics, Joe, the optics. And that's what we have
Yeah.
a hard time understanding. Well, wait a minute. He wobbled and he held his head, not his back. Remember when he wobbled, he grabbed his head. He didn't grab his back. So you're telling me it's his back and not his head. And then this happens and now he flies back. And it's like, well, then does this guy get shaken up and then all of a sudden he recovers within minutes? Because, neurologically, they're not picking. Because you would figure, okay, you just got slammed. If you had a neurological issue on Sunday, you just rattled your head again. How in the hell are you getting on that plane now? How don't you have like this throbbing headache? Don't you? And then he's back on the plane. So, and as Nick Hicks tweeted out all the positives, that's the amazing part about all of this. That while we keep trying, not we, but the periphery keeps trying to, hammer this thing away and find the blame game somewhere. All the evidence continues to pile up that this kid just shows you that he's bouncing back, and that's why the story's so strange.
People who are expressing outrage or concern, it's from a good place. It's people who want to make sure the player is being taken care of, that his long-term health is not being placed at risk. So, I don't think that there's any ill intent from those expressing concern.
What do they got to do to get him to get rid of the ball? We'll wrap it up with this. What do you got to finally do
Well,
if
it
you're
takes
Mike
experience.
McDaniel to sit down? Shit, dude. What more experience do you want? Think about it. You hung onto the ball, you blew out your hip. You hung on the ball, you're getting slammed by a defensive tackle. Get rid of the goddamn ball. What do you got to do, bro? I don't get it.
Ryan Fitzpatrick was good at that. He was good at avoiding
All
sacks
the
and
great
knowing.
quarterbacks are good at
Yeah.
that, Joe. That's how they stay alive, my brother.
It's tough though because Tua got rid of the ball so quick, and what did that result in? Jalen Waddle was like 103rd in the NFL in yards per catch. So it's a catch-22, literally and figuratively, because it does take time to get down the field. And Miami's offensive line is performing at a better level. Only one sack last night. They are much better at pass pro than they have been in the last 3 years, for
And
sure.
by the way, while he was the fastest last year in getting rid of the football, I think he's still like the fourth or fifth at 2.5 seconds. So he's still getting rid of the ball quickly, and Waddle's numbers are explosive. It really wasn't about him getting rid of the ball quickly. It was just about bad play design and a bad offense last year. Now it's a great play design, great offense, and Waddle's numbers are beastly, and he's still one of the 5 quickest at getting rid of the football. What I want him to learn is how to get rid of the football quickly when the play is over. That's what I need him to learn. Because if not,
Check
let
out
me tell
our
you
yeah.
something. Marino made it for 17 years. That kid won't make it to his 7th year if he continues at this pace. That's the brutal honesty. You keep hanging onto the ball, your career's over. That's the reality that somebody's got to tell Tua. You want to keep hanging onto the ball, your career will be over very soon.
check
Somebody's
out
got to
our
go ahead.
check out our coverage on the Palm Beach Post Dolphins website. Hal Habib's column, Hard Questions Demand Answers, on Dolphins Tua Tagovailoa injury. Enjoy the weekend. I'll enjoy watching some Sunday NFL football from the couch, even though I guess I would have been there even if it was a Dolphins game. So
Why don't you get some hijinks to get delivered, bro? Get on the
yeah,
app.
yeah, I gotta look. Can I get the Uber? I haven't done the Uber Eats. You can get Uber Eats from anywhere, including Hijinks. Go look
Yeah,
into that.
bro.
Okay, okay.
DoorDash,
Or
Uber Eats.
DoorDash. Okay.
One
All
of
right.
those has
Yeah.
got to have
Sunday.
hijinks, dude. You got to have
All right.
your wings.
Sriracha. Yeah. The sriracha wings. We're going to do that.
All right. Follow him on Twitter as Schad Joe and catch his work there at the Palm Beach Post. We'll catch you next week. Have a great weekend, Joe.
See you, buddy. You too.
You got it. Be good. That is Joe Schad.